What's up, New Hope family, and welcome to The Show with No Name, episode 17. My name is David. I am so glad that you are here with us. With me, as always, is Pastor Leo. Hello, Pastor Leo.
Kumusta, everyone?
Welcome to our study on the book of Judges. We're chugging along.
Mm-hmm.
We're slowing up a little bit, though. We only had to read one chapter for this week.
Yeah.
In fact, we're spending multiple podcast episodes on the same judge. For the first,
true.
I don't want to say the only time because we're not, but I'm assuming this will be the only time that one judge has multiple podcast episodes.
There might be more because we have Samson, and
we do have Samson. Are we going two on him? You don't know
Maybe.
yet. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. You'll know. Mm-hmm. But for sure, this is the first time we've done this.
Yes, this is the first judge where we're spending time.
And I'm also excited. You might notice my cup here. This isn't like on purpose or anything. It just so happens that Slim Chickens has these. Basketball related.
It says Slim Sanity.
Yesterday, it does say Slim Sanity. Yesterday was Selection Sunday. Which is my Super Bowl. It is my favorite day of the year, I think, is Selection Sunday. Although, are you a college basketball fan at all, Pastor Leo?
In the Philippines, a little bit, yes.
Okay.
But not here.
Okay. Well,
too many for me.
Sure. There are a lot of them. The Selection Sunday is when for those of you who might not know, they announce who made it to the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. And college basketball is my favorite. And it's just, but Greg Gumbel, who's been the voice of that selection show for forever, but they didn't go into detail, but it said like dealing with like a family health situation. He's going to be gone for the whole tournament. And it was really sad yesterday. Like, he's the voice of that tournament. Like, it's, boy. Like I feel my childhood when he starts to announce like the teams in the bracket and everything. It was just weird. It was, I don't know.
Only goes to show you're getting older.
I was just going to say it's a part of getting older. The Twins, I love the Minnesota Twins and grew up listening to it. They had two Hall of Fame broadcasters that did the radio broadcasts. And then Dick Bramer, for like 39 years, did TV, and he's gone now, and the radio guys are gone. So not even that. I'm like, all the voices of the Twins are gone. Greg Gumbel's not there. Jim Nance isn't doing the tournament. I don't like this whole getting old thing, Leo. I didn't sign up for this. It was forced upon me.
The one that got to me recently was the passing away of Akira Toriyama.
I'm not sure I know who that is.
He's the one who created Dragon Ball Z. Or the Dragon Ball series.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And it's like, oh no, that was a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, that was I never got really into it, but it was a huge deal when I was a kid. Like, that was, Pokemon was like the biggest anime because that crossed over into the mainstream much more than Dragon Ball did. But yeah, I had a lot of friends that were really into Dragon Ball Z. Right. There was that like weird like white and purple guy with a tail.
Frieza.
I remember that guy existed. And then a bunch of guys with spiky hair. Mm-hmm. And that's as much as I know about Dragon Ball.
Blonde spiky hair.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been David and Leo Are Getting Old. Thank you for joining us on this. It is weird. I'd love to know.
Back in my days.
In the comments, like if you've ever had a moment like that, which I'm guessing a lot of you have, like if you've had that moment of like, oh, this is never going to be the same again. Now, hopefully, the thing that brought this up, hopefully it sounds like Greg Gumbel will hopefully be back next year.
Oh, that's good.
So that would be very nice. But like the Twins guys are, they're done. And Jim Nance, who's called the tournament forever, always does the Final Four. He's not calling the Final Four anymore. Like, stuff like that makes me feel old because those are the voices that I associate with that thing that I love. And it's weird to then have a different voice. So yeah, let us know. And so for Leo, it's, what was his name again?
Akira Toriyama.
I assume it's a man. I'll be honest. Yes. I wouldn't know if that's a man or a woman's name. The creator of Dragon Ball passing away. I would love to hear some of your stories on that. What's the thing that triggered that you realize like, oh, I'm getting older. Like, this isn't going to be like it was in my childhood anymore.
Right.
Because for my son, it wasn't like we watched it together yesterday. It was the first Selection Sunday he cared about. Like, he was so excited about it. He loves filling out brackets. Mm-hmm. He makes his own brackets and then plays through them on his little hoop in the living room. Like, he's a nerd, and I love it. But like, it was no different to him. Like, in fact, next year if Greg Gumbel comes back, he'll be like, well, this isn't right. This isn't the right guy. And I'm sure there was someone who did it before the guys that I like doing it. But it's just for me that, so it's okay that it changes, but it definitely hits you a little bit. You're like, oh,
it does.
It doesn't seem right. Well, speaking of things that didn't seem right, let's jump into Judges 6.
Segue.
You're welcome for that segue, everybody. Judges 6, we're going to talk about Gideon.
Yes.
Which I'm excited about. So why don't you, as you always do, Pastor? Oh, real quick, if you haven't read Judges 6 yet, just pause us real quick. Read through Judges 6. It's not too bad of a read. You can get through that real quick. But we don't, read through every verse here on the podcast, and so we very much encourage you to be reading along with us.
That's right.
And then, then come back. Like, don't pause us, read it, and not come back.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a bummer.
That's true.
Maybe there's someone out there who's going to read it and they'll be like, I got all of it.
Just don't pause us in the middle of us making a weird face. Sometimes that happens. We
did that we recorded Host Moments today, which is kind of what we call when we're kind of talking to you if you join us online. And we had a moment where we were like, oh, pause this quick because the info's on the screen. And Hattie brought that up. She's like, hopefully we don't make a weird face when we pause it. And so we stopped our host moment and made normal faces to let them pause it on our normal faces.
Oh, there we go.
This is the second time in a day this has come out. It's been a weird day.
It's important.
Judges 6. So read that, come back. Okay, welcome back. Those of you who had to pause it and read it. We're going to jump in. Pastor Leo, as always, why don't you start us off with a summary of what we're going to be reading about here.
All right, so this is a short one. So even though our obedience to God is not consistent and at times is very fragile and fickle and finicky, and any other synonyms for that?
Do they all have to start with an F? Yeah. Because I think we've ran out now. I think you exhausted all of
them. But God is another F, faithful.
Oh, I just thought of one. Fractious.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah.
Fractious.
Sorry, but go back to God being faithful. That's much better. That's much
God is F, faithful.
Yes.
To his word to bring about our deliverance.
And as we mentioned already, but Judges 6 and then Judges 7, which we'll get to in the next episode, but we're getting into the story of Gideon. So we came off of Deborah.
Yes.
Who was the biggest name we had got to, although again, Ehud should be number one, but he's not.
Oh boy, yeah.
So Deborah is one of the biggest named judges, but Gideon might be even bigger than Deborah, or at least he's in that major league tier along with Deborah. Is that fair to say? So what are we kind of looking to learn here from the story of Gideon's life that we jump into here in chapter 6 for the first time?
Okay, so the thing is, even though we've seen the cycle that we talked about since the start of our dive through the book, Gideon's story actually ends what some scholars refer to as a time of quote-unquote rest for the people of Israel. So,
okay, as I read through chapter 6, this doesn't feel like a rest period. Now I know the headers, we've talked about this before on our podcast here. The headers were not a part of the original writing.
Yes.
So those are added there. However, they give you a description of what we're going to read. And for this one, it's Midian oppresses Israel. I don't view a time of oppression as like a really great rest time. Not to mention the first verse, which was a part of the original writing, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So again, we're just back into the cycle of disobedience. Like disobey, and then we're sad and we ask for help, and then he fixes it, and then we obey for a bit, and now we're back to disobeying for like, what are we? This is like the fourth time now in Judges, fourth time in Judges we've got to that. What's the rest part? Because I'm not sure I'm buying that, Pastor Leo.
Well, okay. In Judges 6, verse 1, we read about the people of Israel going through 7 years of oppression. Those 7 years are sandwiched between two periods of quote-unquote relative quiet. Sure. So this part of this story in Judges, Gideon's run through our book is the end of that first period of quiet. And then after this would be 7 years of oppression. So we got that right now, but spoiler alert, it's gonna get worse.
Just that theme doesn't go away as we go through the book of Judges. But so the conquest of, you say Yabin?
Yabin, yes.
I just can't not call him Jabin for whatever reason. But we don't have anything recorded during those 40 years of rest after his conquest. So now we get to Gideon.
Yes.
In the disobedience, like I said in chapter 1, and we meet the Midianites. So that name might sound familiar to some people, right? Because it's not rocket science. Like the Midianites are the descendants of Midian, correct? But like who? But tell me a little bit more about like who is Midian and like who are they? What are these people doing?
Oh, they're my neighbors.
Interesting. I don't think they were from the Philippines,
No?
actually. No, I don't.
Are you sure? It's
I mean, I'm not actually. I can't definitively say that they never visited the Philippines, but I'm pretty confident.
Okay, so Abraham had more sons than just Isaac and Ishmael.
Yeah.
Though those are the big ones. But he also had 6 sons by Keturah, who is his wife, after the death of Sarah. So the names are, good luck with this,
Yeah, you got this, Leo.
Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua.
Shua.
Shua! It's
Sounds
like,
Al Pacino saying, hooah.
I know, right? All right, so you can find that if you want reference to that. That's Genesis
Yes.
25, verse 2.
Yeah, you didn't just make that up off the top
No,
of your head.
I did not.
Yeah, that's in there
Like,
somewhere.
But you can't make like Shua. But the Midianites were the descendants of Midian. of
Which is
course.
fascinating because that would mean they're like cousins
Yep.
to
Cousin people.
the Israelites.
Right.
Yeah, not like blood, like because obviously it had been a lot of generations since
Right.
Abraham at this point. But they can trace themselves back to Abraham, who the
Yep.
Israelites consider to be like their the father of their people.
That's true.
So can the Midianites.
These Midianites settled in Genesis 25 verse 6 calls it the land of the east. And then as you can see, because of their relation, when Moses fled the wrath of Pharaoh, he traveled to Midian in Exodus 2 verse 15. There, Moses met and married his wife Zipporah and served his father-in-law Jethro. The fact that Jethro was a priest of Midian, verse 16, Exodus 2 verse 16 says that, indicates that the Midianites, at least during Moses' time, still retained the knowledge of the God of their father Abraham.
Or at least some, at minimum,
little
some of
bit,
them.
yeah,
At least some
some.
of them had that because obviously Jethro and Zipporah did.
Yep.
And again, I remember being a kid and like you're learning about like the Midianites, and you don't think about them being like, because they're this enemy tribe, right? They're
Right.
this other tribe of people that are constantly fighting the Israelites, and they have these terrible wars and raids on each other. But like, they're like the same people almost, and you're just like, oh, that's really a bummer.
That's so true.
But I think there's a lot of lessons that's why I think the history, which we're going to jump into here in a second too, but I think that learning the history and studying the history and the historical context of all these things is so important because these aren't, it's not like, okay, like God's chosen people, the descendants of Abraham, and then everyone else around them were just completely abandoned by, like, no, these were people that also descended from Abraham.
Yep.
And also at least at one point, like not that long ago, the time of Moses, some of them were still following him. And maybe I was taught it that way as a little kid, but I certainly didn't like process it that way in my brain. And even, I was thinking about this the other day with the Samaritans, because I was studying the two kingdoms, Judah and Israel. And like the Samaritans are basically just the northern tribes that didn't travel south. We never learned it that way. They were just these like enemy people that like, I can't believe one of them was nice to a Jewish guy, but like, they were literally the tribes of Israel were the Samaritans. And
That's right.
And just so many things I just love the history, but I think it's such an important thing, especially as we're doing a deep dive here in Judges. And same thing, I want to go back to chapter 4, right? And 5 a little bit, but 5 was that weird song that confuses and scares me. So I'm mostly going to talk about 4. But so we have Barak or Barak, whatever, and Deborah's victory over those iron chariots, right? And so they won the valley. What was the name of the valley again?
Jezreel.
Yeah, the Jezreel Valley.
Yeah.
And so they were able, now they're farming. They've got all these crops. And that's what drew these raids in that we're reading about here in verse 6, right? Or in chapter 6, verse 3, I think. Yeah. So for whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. So like they gained all this new territory under Deborah, but that only brought, and now don't get me wrong, clearly their disobedience from the Lord, was involved in this as well. But that's where we get these Midianites and the Amalekites are like, well, we would love these giant fertile valleys with all these crops growing, and we're going to go take them. And
look at all the crops.
And so then, we learn, what verse is it in? Verse 2. because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and caves. Like, that's a bummer. Like, you just won these giant fertile valleys. Like, you'd think we're going to build these like beautiful farm communities. And no, we're going to live in dens of caves because the Midianites were such a huge problem for us. Like, that's a rough little stretch there after what seems like this glorious victory. And not seems like it was.
It was.
This incredible victory where you gain this really important land where you can grow crops and feed your people. But because they started to disobey God, that only brought more destruction upon them. And they end up living in caves.
That's right.
Dens. Like caves is one thing, right? It's the ancient world. Like, sometimes we had to live in caves. But dens sounds so like animalistic. Like, wolves live in dens.
Right.
Like, why were the people of Israel living in dens?
Cave paintings and all that.
Yeah. Should have been a little before this time,
Right.
but that's what they had to go back to, yeah.
But yeah, and as always, because of that, they asked God for help. But this time, God did not immediately send a deliverer/judge. Instead, he sent a prophet. So no judge this time. He sent a prophet. The prophet told the people of Israel that because of their behavior, they had forfeited their right to be delivered.
Okay, 2 questions. One, do we know anything about this prophet? And 2, like, that's it?
Yeah.
Like, that's all the prophet came to say? He wasn't like, but don't worry. Like, that was it?
Yep, that was it.
That's cold.
It is. It's
Not
like,
that it wasn't earned, I guess.
Right.
You know, this is the 4th time they've gone through the same cycle, but oof.
it's like the prophet goes there. It's like, thus says the Lord.
Yeah.
Told ya. That's it.
But we don't get any other information about this prophet, which is I find interesting because he's first of all, we are not getting a lot of prophets here in Judges.
Yes.
We're getting judges in Judges.
That's right.
But I mean, Deborah was she a prophetess?
Prophetess.
Yeah.
Judge, yes.
So she was a prophet, but we don't have anyone like just prophesying, you know, like they're Isaiah or anything.
Right.
Very often in
Right.
Judges. And then this guy comes in, he doesn't even get a name. Like, at least
true.
that one judge got a verse about it. He got the one verse. This prophet just doesn't get a name, even though he's bringing this really important message. But
Which is, if you think about it, it only goes to show again the kind of attitude the people had towards God that time.
it must have been pretty
Yep.
bad.
And it's like,
by
yeah,
this
that's it. That's your message for us. Get out of here. We're not even going to put your name down here.
Yeah.
Your message sucked.
But
so
it does kind of suck. But they earned it. But
Yeah.
you get to end of verse 10, and I mean, he's just like, hey, like, you've not obeyed me.
Yeah, because
Like,
here's
you
the thing.
caused this.
Few lessons about this
Okay.
non-message from the prophet. It's like, you suck. So it's like, that's it. Sorry, but here's a few lessons. Number 1, it shows us that God is the one who is in control. Just because you say, God help, he's not compelled to deliver us just because we asked him, or it feels more like an order. Like, I order you to save me. No.
Yeah, sure.
God is the one who is in control.
Yep.
Second point, Israel is not, again, we talked about this before, but Israel is not immune to God's wrath and judgment. They don't have the immunity idol. They also suffer wrath and judgment. And number 3, it is God's grace that saves us, not actions, not repentance. So people thinking they're saying sorry or God help me, and they're thinking that God's going to come rushing to their rescue. No, God's grace saves us, not our actions, not our words. So it is up to him whether he will rescue us or deliver us. Sometimes he will let us suffer the consequences of our bad decisions.
Well, that's depressing. Thank you for that, Leo.
You're welcome. Thank you for the... No, I'm just kidding.
But now we get to Gideon.
Yes.
He finally shows up after those just 10 verses of joy at the beginning. But now we get to the part where God calls Gideon to save the people of Israel.
That's right. Few things to note here. Gideon's call followed the same pattern as Moses' in Exodus 3. You will see the same pattern if you read Exodus 3. They both received their call while they were hiding and doing ordinary everyday work. Moses was in Midian. Gideon was hiding while he was threshing wheat.
Which is one of my favorite parts of, like, he's not like the brave guy,
Yes.
like, at all.
Yes.
Like, that's one of the best things about Gideon. Like, his story takes like maybe the most bravery, right? Which we'll get to that a little bit more in next podcast. But a lot of us know some of the story of Gideon, like, so much bravery required to follow through with what Gideon ends up following through to. And this, like, that part doesn't need to be in there, other than to just give us a little glimpse into who Gideon was.
Right.
Like, God didn't go. It's kind of like when he finds David, right? And he doesn't go find the, big powerful son of Jesse. He goes and finds the puny little shepherd boy that no one even thought was worth inviting to the meeting. Like, Gideon's cowering, like, just trying to not make any noise, hiding in the wine press, like, just, please, Midianites don't know I'm here. That's the guy who's going to save the people of Israel. I love that.
That's right. So both.
By the way, I love it because that's who I would have been. Just to clarify,
So
I'm
true.
like, oh my word,
That's so true.
I hate that
That's
I'm
me too.
6'6".
It's like,
I
keep
can't hide
your
right
head
now.
down.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't bother it. Don't bother him. Don't bother him. But anyway, so both Moses and Gideon were both told that God was sending them on a mission. Of course, they both protested that they were not up to the task. Again, showing Gideon's character. They received the same promise from God that he will be with them. They received the same promise. They both received signs to confirm their call through a miraculous fire. You have Moses' burning bush, the ever popular burning bush, and the angel burning Giddy Boy's food offering.
You just,
I'd have called him Giddy Up.
You feel compelled to give every judge a nickname, and I don't know why this happened, but I forgot about it.
It helps people remember.
I forgot about it until now, and I'm like, oh yeah, there we go.
Gideon. So we have Gideon's food offering. So the message was clear: the God of the Exodus has come to Israel's rescue again. Although he did say that I'm not going to rescue you that time, but he did come through.
Yeah.
Again, because of God's timing, not ours.
Yeah, and God tests Gideon, which I always find interesting because, like, obviously God knows if Gideon's going to pass or fail.
Yes.
Right? Like, he wasn't shocked when Gideon follows through with this test.
That's right.
So it's always so fascinating to me because God obviously knows. So, part of me, like, he's testing him, but is he really, like, does he need Gideon to learn? You know what I mean, though? Like,
That's
Gideon,
true.
Gideon needs to know that he's that committed to God.
Yes.
More than God needs to know that, because God's very aware how
Yes.
committed he is or is not. Like, he wasn't, surprised one way or the other. But I don't know. I always found
It's
that
not for
interesting.
God's benefit.
Yeah, I found that interesting. But we learned that Gideon's father has a altar to Baal or Baal or Baal or whatever you choose to call him, who sucks. By the way, we've discussed him before on the show with no name. Not a fan. Not a fan.
That's right.
Of that false god, but which is obviously not great. God doesn't want them worshiping other gods, so he tells them, get rid of that thing.
That's right.
Pull it down.
Yep. Tear it apart.
Yeah.
I want it gone yesterday.
God was just an annoying office boss.
But this part of the story reminds me of Luke 16 verse 10. It says there, whoever can be trusted with small things can also be trusted with big things. Whoever is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in big things too. So it's not really a little deal if we think about it, but I want you to think about this. How can Giddy Boy be expected to go against the Midianites? You're going against a big army that drove people into dens and caves. How can you be expected to go against people like that if putting God above your family or your townspeople or your relatives or your brother or your sister or your parents is already a challenge? So it's the same thing with our commitment to Jesus today. Some people balk at the idea of, I'm going to go against what my neighbors are going to say. I'm going to go against what my friends are going to say. And because of that, I quit. This is too tough. Well, it's the same thing. Gideon destroys the altar. The town was outraged. Of course, that is understandable. And Gideon was saved from death by his father. See, here's the thing, and we don't know how people are going to respond and who God is going to use to come to our aid, to come to help us with our cause. In this case, Gideon's father chose Gideon over Baal. And if you see it, like Gideon is because of what Gideon's father did. Gideon is reborn as a hero, and he's given a new name, which is Yerubbaal, which means
let Baal contend against him.
Yep, that's right, and that's what Gideon's dad
basically
Joash,
means like bring it on, fake God.
Yep.
It's like pretty aggressive name.
It's if he's gonna defend himself, let him do it to prove that he's real, which is an awesome kind of name, right? You're called Yerubbaal.
And it's cool to see the change in his father, right? Like obviously God uses Gideon to save the Israelites from the Midianites, but in this particular instance, he also uses him to sort of redeem his own father.
That's right.
And most likely some of the other, because clearly they could have overpowered, it was his dad's name, Joash, right? They could have overpowered Joash and Gideon and got Gideon and killed him if they wanted to.
That's right.
But they chose to listen to Joash, who's like, hey, let Baal do this himself. And if he's real, and then he doesn't. Right. So they don't dive deep into it, but it seems like he's probably redeemed and is probably following Yahweh again, and maybe the other people in whatever den and cave they're hiding in are probably doing the same thing. So it's kind of cool that little part of it as well, that we see that he kind of uses him to bring his family back before this big thing, which is what happens next, right? God.
That's right.
Now starts to use Gideon to rally all the Israelites together to fight off the invaders.
Yep. He gathers the Abiezrites and other tribes to fight against the invaders. So let's again clarify at this point. This was not because of Gideon's resourcefulness alone. We know for a fact that he's not that brave. So it's not because of Gideon's resourcefulness. The tribes were brought together by the Spirit of God. Gideon was an instrument of it, and the next verses show us how true this is.
We discussed that he's kind of hiding and just trying to get this stuff done and hidden before the Midianites can come. And then we get to verse, is it 36? Let me check my Bible. Yeah, verse 36, which is one of the most famous parts of the Gideon story, right? The fleece.
The fleece test.
And first of all, dude's just like, I'm going to test God a whole bunch. That might take some bravery or stupidity.
Right.
We're not really tracking on the bravery path with Gideon, so I'm leaning the other way. But he really he tests him, gets the answer he's looking for. Is like, I'm not sure.
Maybe
can we adjust the test that I came up with a little bit? Oh my word, Gideon. But I'm sure we're all guilty of this quite often. But yeah, this test kind of brings us back to he's not the obvious choice. Of course this is the guy to save. He's like, man, let's test God about 97 more times real quick. So what lesson do we learn from his cowardly testing?
Other than he came up with best 2 out of 3?
Yeah, he did. Is this the first instance in human history of best 2 out of 3? That's a good point.
It is.
Wow, you heard it here on the show with no name.
He trademarked it.
Next time you say best 2 out of 3, just say Gideon. Do you want Gideon it? I love this.
Do I do a Gideon? So God already gave assurance to Gideon earlier. So him asking for reassurance was more an expression of unbelief than of faith. So think about it. Him testing God, it's not, I'm going to test him because my faith is strong. No, it was really just, I'm not sure. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I got it wrong.
Things get better for Gideon. Right. He's really great, but this is just not his most shining moment. I promise.
No, it's not. But in the same way, God's response to Gideon's fleece tests looks more like God putting up with Gideon's weak faith. rather than
Yeah.
a sign that God was pleased. It's like, okay, here we go again. And then Gideon goes, best 2 out of 3, God. It's like, okay. Okay.
At least he stopped there. Like my son, if he loses, he does not stop at 2 out of 3. It's like 3 out of 5.
Let's go 3 out of
Yeah.
5. It's like, but yeah. So here's the lesson. God sometimes responds to our need for reassurance. But there's a big but. Don't push it. Okay? So don't push it. It's okay.
And even, like Gideon knows not to push it. You could say, like when he does do the 2 out of 3, he's like, I'm gonna read it directly.
It's so funny.
Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the feast. Please. Like he's overly like polite and like cowering, but he's still like I am this terrified of you, but not enough where I'm not going to test you the second time. But he is like, there is an awareness there of
right.
like, I probably shouldn't be doing this. Like I'm pushing the limits here,
Right.
but like, he at least comes to it with humility and
Yes.
with the correct amount of reverence
That's
for
right.
God as he's
That's
doing
right.
that.
And
Yeah.
that's the key. That's
Yeah.
important too. You're not testing him just for the sake of, you know what? Are you alive, God? I'm going to test you. No. He knows that God is there. He just needs reassurance.
Yeah.
So don't push it. Don't keep testing God just for fun. Don't keep testing God just to attempt to disprove him somehow or to prove that he's not alive or he's not there or there is no God. Or you're just procrastinating. It's just delaying tactics for you. I'm going to keep testing you. Right? It's like,
That's not good. I need to be
I'm
careful
going to
of that
keep
one.
testing you because I'm really not keen on
Don't wanna
doing
do this yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So God knows our thoughts and what's in our hearts. God knows what Gideon is thinking. That's why he gave in. So don't push it. Okay. So all right. So here's your bottom line for this one. God knows that he calls weak and disobedient people to follow him. He knows it. He knows it. God deals with us the same way he dealt with Gideon. He is patient. God is kind. God is gracious to all of us. So we can rest assured that he will stay by our side even when we delay obedience or question him. So, all right, head change, heart change, and life change for this one. Head change is this. Know that God's presence will never fail us because he is faithful, despite our hesitancy or unwillingness to obey. God's presence will never fail. Heart change, feel confidence in God's faithfulness. Feel that confidence. Despite our slowness to obey him, God will be faithful. And then life change is obey him when he asks us to take a step of faith and confess and repent when we don't.
Got some discussion questions for us this week, Leo?
All right, here are your questions. Number 1, in what situation or situations has God shown his faithfulness to you?
Be a great one to answer in the comments to maybe encourage other people and share with others. I think
That's
that'd be a
so
great
true.
one. We'd love to have you do that.
And when someone answers, encourage them. Give them a positive response. So, number 2, what kind of excuses have you given God before? Ouch!
Feel free to answer this one. A
Yep,
little tougher
feel
one
free
to
to
put
answer
in the
that
comments.
too, right? What might be different about your life if you always obeyed God immediately without giving excuses? It's tough one, but that's a good thing to think about. And then the third question is, what effect can fear have on your relationship with God?
And then our next step, we're going to go to Judges 7 for next week.
Yes.
So read along with us.
Still with Giddy
into
Boy.
Judges 7. We're going to, we'll find out what happens
Yep.
with Gideon. Does he pull out a different type of fabric to test him with? Or does he just end with the fleece?
Dun, dun,
Do you think it was the same fleece day 1 and day 2? Like, did he properly dry the fleece?
Oh, I think he used a different one just to be sure.
Just to make sure. Like, I'm gonna go borrow a new
Yep.
fleece from my newly following the Lord
Yep.
Father. He'll
That's right.
lend me one. I like that.
Maybe
Anyway.
use a pair of jeans this time.
Oh, I don't think so. You wear fleece jeans, Leo? That's great. Well, if you have any fleece jeans, send them to Pastor Leo. But otherwise, join us next time. Our new episodes go out every single Wednesday. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet so you get notified when new episodes go live, or if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which, by the way, over 1,000 subscribers now on our YouTube channel.
Yay!
Shout out to all of you out there.
Shout
who
out
have subscribed.
subscribers.
That is awesome. We are very, very thankful. Like 2.5-ish years ago, we had like 22. So
Wow.
it's really, really cool to have 1,000 of you out there now. So thank you to those of you who have done that. If you haven't done that yet, click that subscribe button. Go in and turn notifications on on your phone so you get notified when the new episodes go live. And yeah, then join us next time. I think that's all I've got. So we love you, New Hope family, and we will see you next time.
Ingat.